Welcome back to the Untethering Shame podcast, where we dive deep into the hidden emotions that shape our lives and the transformative tools that help us heal. I'm your host, Kyira Wackett, and today we're reconnecting with a guest who brings a wealth of wisdom and compassion to our conversations about healing, Jessica Parente. You might remember Jess from her incredible episode on codependency, where she shared her insights as a psychiatric mental health nurse practitioner, trauma-informed coach, and level 4 Brainspotting provider. She's the founder of It Ends With You and a best-selling author who helps people identify and heal from subconscious patterns, including those rooted in shame and trauma. In today's episode, we're diving into Brainspotting, a powerful therapeutic modality that goes beyond talk therapy to target and release trauma stored deep in the brain and body. Having experienced a Brainspotting session with Jess myself, I'll share my journey, including the resistance I felt and the profound impact the process had in allowing all parts of me, yes, even the resistant ones, to show up and begin to heal. We're going to explore what Brainspotting is, why it's used, and the unique challenges it presents, particularly the shame many people feel about seeking alternative therapies or stepping into the unknown of what healing might look like. So if you've ever felt stuck, uncertain, or even shamed about this idea of how you are going to start or move through your healing journey, this episode is for you. So let's get comfortable, stay open, and untether the shame that holds us back from this experience of true transformation. Start with hi. How are you? I say I'm excited on every episode when I start it, and I genuinely mean it, but I'm just like, fuck yeah, I get to spend an hour with you today, and I am buzzing in excitement because of that.
I have to temper the heart pounding out of my chest right now because I feel buzzy is the only word. I feel
Yes.
I've never done coke, but I imagine this might be what it feels like.
That might be what it feels like.
Yeah, this is way better. I'm so thrilled to be back here and to be having another conversation.
I know. And I got my Spotify Wrapped yesterday that told me that your episode was 347% listened to more than every other episode, which means what you're doing is important. I also think it's a little nod to our vibe. I'm going to give us that because I think it's there was such a natural comfort and exploration. And I don't know that I've ever had that so quickly with someone where we had known each other for 16 minutes, hit record, and then it was wait, have we been friends since we were 2? Because that's what it feels like.
Yeah, it's so wild that when you sent an email that to me, thank you for the little ego boost, but I literally had to ask my partner, who is a math teacher, I'm I don't even understand what this number means. He's it's really good, Jess. And I'm oh, okay, I'll take that. But yeah, I just really can't wait to dig into our next conversation and just see, honestly, how you've been doing since we last met up and where we can go from here in the ripple effect of what we're putting out into the world.
Listeners, I already alluded to this in the introduction. So if you haven't listened to our first episode, listen to it because there was so much. I learned so much around codependency, around some of my dynamics, the ways that I'm still really confusing healthy interpersonal interdependence with codependence. It was so beautiful. Mm-hmm. And then we decided we should do a Brainspotting session and I should do this Brainspotting. And I was it's mostly made up, right? It's not real. But also I should probably say it's real and I should do it and notice my resistance and my discomfort. Mm-hmm. So we did it. And I'm fuck yeah, we need to talk about this here. Now it's not just we should talk about Brainspotting because it's a thing. It's we should talk about Brainspotting because it's a thing. And I had a big fucking reaction and I was not expecting that. And I now have a different type of excitement, but a mutually elevated excitement to talk about this in this context with everyone here.
Yeah. Really, I can't even remember the timeline of it's been maybe 5 or so months since your session. And so what's really incredible is that the processing hasn't stopped from that session. It doesn't end. It keeps continuing. So I guess the easiest thing to start with is what the hell is brain
Yes.
spotting? Because it sounds like some, wacky, it is going to sound wacky. I will not discredit that it is going to sound completely made up or that I'm just feeding you some woo woo shit. And it's a little bit of woo woo shit. But the simplest definition of brain spotting that I could try to muster up, and I'm going to try to temper my excitement because once I start talking about it, then I just go full steam ahead. Brain spotting is a deeply transformative and effective way to heal traumas, emotional symptoms, physical symptoms, and it works with the body. So it's a somatic. Somatic's just a fancy word for body, y'all. So it's an effective somatic modality that uses eye positioning. So similar to EMDR, eye positioning to access the brain's self-scanning and self-healing capabilities.
Mm-hmm.
So in short, we use where you look to help access how you feel and to unlock it. So if people are more familiar with EMDR, where originally we used eye positioning going back and forth, but now a lot of people do butterfly tapping. EMDR is a really effective way to heal trauma. And how I like to say it is I feel like brain spotting is EMDR on steroids.
Mm.
And where you lie in since you experienced it firsthand,
Mm-hmm.
and you have done other treatment modalities, I would be interested to hear what your definition and interpretation of your experience was.
I mean, I felt like it was I'll give you my human person response and then I'll put my therapist hat and give you that response. My response was ultimately, what the fuck?
Yeah.
Why is this so uncomfortable? And I think so. We went into the session. I had done a lot of like, okay, what's your resistance to some of this stuff? And I think part of it is I do believe that the world is bigger than my understanding. And I think sometimes buying into things like EMDR, brain spotting means you have to let go of control and making sense of something and being like, I don't really understand this, but the brain and the body are like pretty fucking big and expansive. And there's like things bigger than me and my brain and body that I don't understand. Maybe this is real. So I had to like do that first and be like, okay, I think that this could be a thing. I do think it was helpful that I came in with some resistance because a lot of times people that talk about brain are like, no, it's amazing. It's wonderful. But
Mm-hmm.
there's somebody being like, no, I kind of think this might not be a thing. And then they
Mm-hmm.
do it. Like, is it? And I think the thing that I noticed the most, and we'll obviously get into my session and kind of, because I think the beauty is my session can be an example for people of what they can learn and do. What
Absolutely.
I didn't realize was how predictable my eye patterns were. And you pointed out, I look up and to the left
Mm-hmm.
as a place of comfort, and I couldn't unlearn that or unsee that after, and now that's what I notice. When
Mm-hmm.
I am in any situation, in any place where I am feeling my own stress or a presumed stress on somebody else, I look up and to the left. And
Mm-hmm.
just these tiny little things, or when you had me look with the pen and I'm like, okay, this is dumb. I'm not going to feel anything. And then we got to a spot and I was like, oh God, I want to close my eyes. I don't want
Mm-hmm.
to do this. Why are we doing this? And so I would say it was the eye patterning, exactly what you said, using eye positioning to access feelings. That feels like the most accessible definition. And what I would say for an individual that's like, okay, but still, what does that mean? It's starting to recognize that as you look in different parts of view, so if we're looking straight at a computer screen, if I'm looking up to the left corner or down to the right corner, it feels different in my body. I like certain movements better than others.
Yep.
And that discomfort is a signal or a sign that there is something there. It's not just my eyes don't like to go that way. And so that was the really cool part of we essentially still just did talk therapy.
Mm-hmm.
But while my eyes were in a very specific spot
Yep.
and noticing what that was like and things I accessed during it. The second thing I'll say from the sort of human spot, and I'll put my therapist hat on,
Mm-hmm.
is I remember specifically creating a consciousness. And I think some of that might be the work I've done on a therapeutic level.
Mhm.
But I do remember wondering and asking you, or kind of stating to you directly, I feel like I might be performing.
Mm,
Am I performing? Am I doing this for you?
mhm,
I'm noticing a resistance. Is this fake? Do I feel this way? Should I shut down? Why am I doing this? And that we were able to then talk about as part of the process.
mhm.
And I think for people to even hear, like, that comes up.
Absolutely.
Honestly, that's probably my therapist explanation too, is exactly what I said. So I'm just going to go with both of them in the same. Like, it was a really interesting interpretation of how I look around as ways to make me feel more or less secure, and recognizing that there are things that I avoid, feelings, thoughts, experiences that can be reflected in the eye movements and the locations that I avoid as well.
We all naturally do something called gaze, GAZE, gaze spotting. So if you're talking to someone about something that's super stressful for you, just pay attention to where your eyes want to go or where they
Mhm,
repetitively go. The body is always sending us signals on where to heal and how to heal. We are just very much conditioned to be disconnected from our bodies because
mhm,
feeling is painful sometimes. Life is painful. So we have a natural, survival mechanism of avoidance that if the feeling is painful, I will avoid the feeling. But
mhm,
with brain spotting, it's so magical to watch. And I say magical because I've done plenty of, the trainings, and I just recently did a master class and where you watch other people's brain spotting experience and the way that the body can heal itself and the way that you know how to heal yourself is
mhm,
just incredible. There's so much that we don't understand about the brain's capabilities to begin with,
mhm,
that this gives us a little bit of a closer way to touch on that.
mhm,
And so when I really, my job as a brain spotting provider is just to notice.
mhm,
When you're talking to me about something, I'm holding space for you. So there's a really important concept that we talk about in the brain spotting community called attunement, where I'm truly just sitting and holding space for you with no agenda. I don't
mhm,
think I know better than you. And we can get into talking about how this model is very different from models that you and I were trained and educated in.
mhm.
But it's just about holding space for you. And then as you're talking, I'm noticing. I'm noticing where your eyes are looking. I'm noticing the body movements. I'm noticing a little purse of your lips or when your throat tightens. All
Yep.
of these are signals because the subconscious, where all of this stuff is stuck, where all of our traumas and our big feelings and where all of our really challenging things that we've been through, that's all trapped in the subconscious parts of our brain. We are subconscious creatures. A lot of the times we just
Mhm,
go through life, right? Going through the motions because it's just the way we've always done it. The body can reflex past the thinking brain, which is exactly what it's doing through blinking, through little twinges in your chest, through some people will say, oh, my stomach gurgled there. And the thinking brain wants to explain, oh, I didn't eat yet today.
right.
But I'm saying, no, that's a signal. Trust that. There's something that's connected there. And it's about really me helping you to trust yourself and then holding space for wherever your processing takes you. We
Mhm,
could start with talking about one thing. Oh, I'm coming to you because I'm having a lot of panic and I can't leave my house and I get this feeling in my chest and and then now I'm isolating and I pay attention to everything that your body is doing while you're telling me about that. And we
mhm.
can either use a gaze spot. I'll say, do you notice that you keep looking in this direction? Or we can use my little magic wand, my
Which is
pointer,
what we did.
which is which is a way sometimes I get people who have that skeptical part of them
Mhm,
to buy into it a little bit.
mhm,
Oh, when you talk to me and you're feeling really intense on this side, well, let's try over here. What do you notice in your body when we shift gaze to the other side?
mhm,
And just that, just allowing someone to almost put their head back on their body Because
Mhm.
again, we are so busy in the hustle and bustle of life and being disconnected and going through the motions because, again, that's a way we're conditioned, that just to watch someone put the head back on the body for a second and they say, well, I don't know. I don't know why that feels different. Well, that's really uncomfortable,
Mhm.
which leads to one of my favorite brain spotting quotes is we don't have to know what it is to know that it is.
Mhm.
And that opens up portals that some Western medicine modalities just cannot open because it's in parts of the brain that those modalities do not access.
Well, it's that idea, I think we have a tendency to want everything to make sense, which is essentially what you're saying. And when it doesn't
Absolutely.
make sense with a fact and evidence, we're like, nah, that's not a thing. It's
Yeah.
made up. And so I think one of the pieces that was really important is to recognize there is I want to say lack of safety, but that doesn't feel like it totally gets it. There's a vulnerability that comes with being able to admit, I don't know.
Yes.
And when we get to a place, and I see this all the time, when people would come to me in the therapy room and they come to me for coaching, they'll
Mhm.
come into a workshop or this like a corporate session, and they're sitting in a room with 1,000 other people, and they're like, I feel this way and I want to stop feeling this way, and you're the expert and you're supposed to fix it.
Yep.
There is an expertise that is required in the room, but I think there's this dismissal of us as
Mhm.
the expert and the healer of our own life because there's a radical ownership then of I actually get to choose that. And that was a big thing that came out. I would rather you tell me what to do with my relationship with my mom than me tell you how I'm feeling and what I want to do,
Right.
because then I feel like an asshole and I don't want to feel that way. So I would rather perform. Because if we connect back to our first episode, I'm incredibly codependent and people pleasing. So I'm going to make sure that everybody else is taken care of. But now you're making me feel this feeling. And I think I never felt it, but I could imagine that some people would feel like they would almost need you to be the villain as things are coming up, like on the other side. Like, you're making me feel this way. This is happening because they need to put blame somewhere else so it feels safe that the feeling is there,
Yes.
as opposed to, oh no, I've been feeling this feeling. And you're actually just giving me some permission and space to acknowledge it. And that's really challenging because I said some really intense stuff in our session. And that was hard to say for the reason it's hard just in general. It's hard because I feel like I'm going to be judged. I don't want you to think I'm a shitty person. Of course, we're all performing in that way. But also, then what does that mean if I actually feel that way? And once I bring it from the subconscious to the conscious, there's an ownership and a responsibility that I would rather not have to take on. And that part I feel like is scary. So we almost just go, well, brain spotting doesn't make sense. But part of it is, but if it stays in the subconscious, I'm not responsible for it. I don't have to do anything with it now.
Exactly. And that's a very safe place for lots of these things to rest, right? And it's
Mhm.
there for a reason. Right? When we experience things that are traumas, and we could go into all our different definitions of trauma, but really for me is trauma is the things that we say to ourselves about ourselves in those moments. I'm not enough, I'm not worthy, I'm not lovable, I'm not important, I'm unsafe. It's what we say to ourselves, but it's also the changes that happen in our body and in our nervous system during those events. And so what brain spotting
Mm.
allows us to do is access where that gets stuck. These are just unprocessed memories in a lot of ways. So
Mhm.
another way that we can think about brain spotting and what the brain that we have no idea what it's fully capable of. But this
Right.
is just a little glimpse of when someone goes through something that is they consider traumatic to them. We have flashbacks and nightmares listed in the DSM, right? Is something that might
Mhm.
come up. So if you think about it from the lens of really us not knowing what the brain is capable of, the brain is always self scanning and correcting. Right? There's so much that goes on in our body that our brain and our body corrects before it ever happens.
Mhm.
And so it's almost as if the brain is scanning and it's scanning for problems and it finds the problem in the flashback where that's stuck somewhere or in the nightmare where that's stuck somewhere and it can see it, but it doesn't know what the fuck to do with it once
Yes.
it gets to it. And brain spotting is kind of the way to unlock that in my experience.
Mhm.
It allows us to get to those deeper parts of the brain, notice it, and allow it to just untie in whatever way it is meant to untie for you, which
Mm-hmm.
takes us back to what you had said about, us being the experts in the room. That is a very Western model, right? Way of
Yep.
thinking that because we have some letters after our name, or because we paid a bazillion and $1 million to go to school, right? That somehow I know more about you than you know about you. So then
Mm-hmm.
treatment becomes about my agenda for you. Your treatment becomes about me. Where
Mm-hmm.
in brain spotting, we practice what David Grand, who is the noticer of brain spotting and who has developed this as a skill and as a modality, is we practice under the neuro experiential model, which says that you bring what we call the frame. So your mind, your body, your nervous system, your experiences walk into my door, or you sit across the computer screen from me. And I trust whatever frame you bring. I help you to notice what's going on with your frame right there. And I follow your process wherever it goes, not you follow what I think. And
Mm-hmm.
so we say we are the tail to the comet. And so
Mm-hmm.
wherever your processing wants to go and whatever comes up as we choose an eye position to work with, and we can work with multiple, we can work with an activating one, or we can work with one that we call, like you said, a resource spot where it
Mm-hmm.
feels a little safer. It doesn't matter because processing will happen anyways.
Mm-hmm.
And wherever you go is where I follow you.
Mm-hmm.
And whatever comes up in that session is what is meant to come up, which is why we can start talking about one thing and then it brings up all this other stuff. Like people could say, I'm having trouble leaving my house and I'm having panic. And that panic can lead to some memory about when they were 4 years old in a dance class and they felt shame because they were really, really scared and they were hiding while all the other little girls were participating. It's insane
Mm-hmm.
what comes up for people, but it is so crazy to watch. And it's really, truly a blessing to experience. And my role, I did a little bit more talking in your session because I could feel that skeptical part showing
Yeah.
up. And
Yep.
I work with internal family systems as well. So I can understand when there are parts showing up.
Yep.
So we did a little bit more talking, I call it butt tapping, right? A little bit
Yeah.
more butt tapping without trying to lead you. And I have since then really just learned to shut the fuck up and let the process happen. And that's where
Mm.
I'm molding and changing my ability to attune based on, again, how the neuro experiential model continues to mold and change in what we are uncovering about the true capacities of the brain, and really taking a back seat from that Western model of me needing to know and just trusting that you know,
Yeah.
and holding that space for you when you don't know, and reassuring when there are moments where heavy shit comes up. And the great thing about brain spotting is you don't even need to talk about it. You could literally sit and blink and you're doing so much hard work,
Mm-hmm.
which is a little bit different from EMDR, right? Where we bring up some painful memory and we reprocess it in a way, right? So EMDR has a time and space for certain. My boyfriend EMDRs. And then when he goes through that process, if he feels like there's something left over, I brain spot it. It
Mm.
all works together. There is a time and place for all of these modalities. It's just that brain spotting is so different from how I've been trained that I have to check myself
Yeah.
and that agenda that, keeps wanting to come forward. Or if someone is really broken down in a session, how much more comfortable I am now than 10 years ago of just sitting
Mm-hmm.
with someone who's completely falling apart and saying, I'm here. I'm here. You're doing great. Keep going. See
Mm-hmm.
where your processing takes you next. And it's
Mm-hmm.
incredible to watch and also incredible to experience.
Mm-hmm.
There has been stuff in my own sessions that multiple times that I will literally stop and with a walk that my subconscious takes me on, and I'll say, holy fuck, brain spotting is amazing. I can't explain
Mm-hmm.
it. And so it is just something that is inexplicable in a lot of ways, which you said, it's a little bit of the just having to trust that magical bit of magical
Yeah.
that we don't know everything.
Well, and I feel like, so you're right. I mean, I think there was also my assumption is because you knew I could kind of hold both spaces a little bit of like, and I think I really appreciate how you bring the parts work in. For some people, that's the first time they're understanding that and they're hearing that. And so I thought it was really cool. Where like, and I could say that like, there's a part of me now that wants to do this, and then you could kind of help name that. I think two things that were really helpful for me. We knew what we were gonna talk about coming in. I knew I wanted to talk about my mom. That helped me a little bit to at least feel like I had some starting point.
Mhm.
But then I think the thing that was really helpful was I already had established a sense of safety with you,
Mhm.
and I think there's something to be said about that because sometimes what we're doing, and that's really what talk therapy can do sometimes too, is like, I don't actually say something sometimes. I'm just letting someone feel safe saying what they wanna say and then not passing judgment and then being there the next time. So there is some overlap I could see that part was really nice.
Mhm.
I think I obviously had the beauty of knowing a bit of your story going into this, so I knew there were some parallels and some ways that you could be like, "Yeah, that is a very normal feeling," kind of thing.
Right.
And so that was really helpful for me. I think the thing that was really also helpful was you did immediately put me in a position of power with the choice to stay looking in those directions.
Mhm.
And so I liked that. Like you had your pen out. I didn't stop looking at I'm sure there were moments I subconsciously or unconsciously did flip,
Yep.
but I was making a continuous choice to stay there, but you were immediately like, whenever you don't wanna look there, you don't have to. If you wanna take a break, if you wanna do this, and that was helpful because it put me in a position of being like, "I think I can do this a little bit longer," and so that sense of internal empowerment of being in a place of discomfort.
Yes.
But I think the second thing that then maybe this is the third at this point, that was also helpful then as I'm doing it was because we could allow that other part in that wanted to protect me and that part was invited,
Mhm.
I think it took that wall down so then I could say, "Well, you can be here too. You
Yes.
don't have to fully make sense of this because it doesn't fucking make sense to you, and you do want to perform a little, and that's totally valid, and we aren't gonna know for sure, but you are also having this feeling." And I think once you did that, it disarmed me a bit in a way where then I could allow it to happen, and that was the first time. I mean, I remember jumping. I don't remember the exact parts, but I jumped to a few different ages of myself and experiences, and
Mhm.
some of those ages, I don't consciously remember anything about. And so that was a really interesting thing to experience. It was very uncomfortable to be like, "Well, what else is under there?
Yeah.
What more is it that is in that space?" And starting to recognize I think at one point we were talking about my mom for the majority of the session, but then we jumped into Everly a bit and talking about now me being a mom. We talked about Jordan and like my partnership. Like there was some pieces that came up that then were connected to that, but it was clear there's a lot of parts that my brain is connecting that I'm not aware of. That then in this like day to day, I'm doing this and I'm not seeing it. And I remember and I like feel it right now. Like I can tell like the hardest part in that was like you pointing out for me how much fear I had about how I was gonna be as a mom for Everly, and how much there was like a both and, like, I have to and I'm still struggling with this anytime I have a reaction, anytime something happens, but also getting to a place where my feeling like I couldn't be angry or having a feeling at my mom was making it so I couldn't move past these feelings that were then popping up in an interaction with Everly, but had nothing to do with her. It was my body saying, "Hey, you have shit from when you were 5. I need you to hold her the same way you're holding Everly, and you're not. Please come to me." And that, like, still obviously, as I'm sitting here and I can't fully explain, and I'm really forcing myself to look in a spot I know is uncomfortable right now, and I wanna go up top,
Proud of you, girl.
and I'm very much down here because I don't like it, and it's like and I'm hot,
Yes.
And I'm like, but it's like that is coming up and we're not even doing that right now.
But you are always naturally doing it.
And now I have an awareness in a
Yes.
different level. And we did one session. I mean, at this point, we're going to do more, but this is months later and I can still feel it and I can recognize it and I can see like even just recalling some of that, I now have created safety that I can bring it back up
Yes.
in my body and now I can invite it in. And I wasn't doing that for a very long time.
No, honey, because that is scary as shit. It is overwhelming and it is terrifying and it's so loaded. And
Mhm.
first off, I don't know you from hardly a stranger on the street, despite feeling like I've known you for 150 years. And you're an amazing mom. And you're an amazing mom because
Thank you.
you care about your healing,
Yeah.
which is that's the generational trickle down that we need. Right?
Mhm.
And this stuff is we talk a lot about, this is why I just love the neuro experiential model so much, because there's so much fluidity with it and it's so much more all encompassing. And we talk a lot about attachment. We talk a lot about the experience of you being in your mom as you're growing and changing and you're developing, and the first 3 years of life before we even have that neocortex develop and we start forming language and have language-based memories. Our
Right.
body has a memory long before that. And that's what talk therapy cannot access because it
Right.
does not exist, right? But your body has this deep feeling that you have. It's not just your lived experiences with mom, it is you growing inside of mom and her
Mm.
emotional state and her generational trauma and whether or not she was using at the time. Same with me. The
Mhm.
first 3 years of when you're a baby crying out, sending signals out into the world. Am I safe? Am I alone? Am I loved? Will I be taken care of? And if we had to cry it out, right from there, you learn how to silence yourself. It's a
Yeah.
natural body dissociative freeze response.
Right.
Or when you're looking at, there are so many people that I work with that we use their children. Your children will become a mirror to all of the shit that is
Oh,
still
yes.
sitting inside of you. And what a blessing and a curse, because it's real nice to be, blissfully ignorant. There are many days where I will be in it. I will be feeling it on such a deep, like visceral, so like, I just can't even describe how like formative that is for my, like where I developed from. And I say to myself, man, being dissociated sure did feel a hell of a lot fucking easier sometimes. Right? It is such a blessing and a curse to be so aware and so aware of myself now.
Mhm.
But this is the healing that will literally change the world
Yeah.
because it starts with you, but it also ends with you,
Mhm.
which sparked the name of my business, right? Because you doing this work and healing the broken attachments to mom and dad and other, primary caregivers and allowing space for that and to feel that pain that is so deep that you don't even have words for it because it existed before your brain had words.
Right.
Your daughter will never experience this stuff in this way. Will she have
Yeah.
her own shit? Sure. She's
Yeah.
a human.
Yeah.
But right, the fact that you are not passing down generational trauma and you're stepping in and healing it, this is really, I say, brain spotting, polyvagal theory, and parts work have been
Mhm.
life changing for me. Life changing.
I feel like the big thing that you gave me too in that was so much of, and if we like loop in the codependency piece,
Sure.
the idea of it's not just that we are sort of enmeshed and like my identity is about this person. It also feels like the healing becomes interdependent with these other people. And I feel like that was a big thing that came out for me when you're talking about this. It starts with you, it ends with you. We were able to create some separation. And some of it's allowed me in the last few months to bring some radical acceptance,
Mm,
some forgiveness to my mom of like, I don't think you're capable
right.
of this based on what I'm now beginning to accept, because it would be easier to stay in a state of resentful hope. I'm resenting and hoping that you can be different. And then it's a cycle.
Yep.
It is much more painful and requires grief to then decide you can't, not just that you aren't. And I feel like the work that we did really allowed me to separate from her to say, whatever she does, however she shows up, that's hers. And I can't presume to understand everything that she has in her life. And so instead, I have to go, this is what I feel, what I need, what I'm thinking, what I'm experiencing. How do I want to respond to all of that given the data that's housed in my body and the new inputs that come in? And I've seen since that time, and I was talking about this with Jordan, she had called me. So she hasn't seen us in person except for a quick visit, which we had brain spotted right before my visit and like talked about some boundaries there.
Right.
She hasn't been back here in a year. And it was a really traumatic experience when she was here last time.
Mm-hmm.
And so, as we're talking about this and starting to think about some dynamics, and I had had this big conversation with her of, these are some things I'd like to change and heal and repair. And then she called me one morning and was like, okay, I have these dates. I can come out and do this. And there's more to the story, but basically an oversimplification of like, wait a minute, we still haven't had any of these conversations in a year.
Mm-hmm.
I do want you to come see your granddaughter. And I would like the opportunity to reframe in a way that we could potentially find a different type of relationship. We haven't done any of the fucking work yet.
Right. Right.
And where I would normally get angry and shut down and put all this stuff on her, I was able to take a breath and say, this isn't going to work for me.
Mm.
This is not safe for me to have this conversation until we have this other conversation. And if we can't, I'm not going to be in a position that you can come. And that I was very neutral. I wasn't mean. I've not been able to do that before because what I was able to do is just go, she doesn't have to do that. And that's okay. But I'm good now. I'm not done.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not fully baked, but I'm in a different part of the process. And I feel like that part I wasn't expecting, and I think maybe, and I don't know, I've done a lot of work around this prior to our brain spotting session. So maybe I don't want to put false hope out to listeners of like, you just need one session and everything feels amazing.
Right.
I had done so much work for over a decade around this. The brain spotting really just allowed me to, it's kind of like if you do 95% of the work, you're like, fuck, I got 5% more of this hill to go. And I am tired and exhausted. Brain spotting allowed me to access what that last 5% would be and to start to feel a little bit more emotionally grounded to do the 5%. And that's really what I wasn't expecting. So I feel like if someone's starting brain spotting and they're maybe newer to their full on therapeutic journey and healing, it also might look different. It might be, all right, you're on
Right.
1%. Brain spotting unlocks the first 15 or 20. You do this, you have some other stuff, and you come back as you go. But that emotional, I don't know what the word is I'm looking for. I think grounding is the only word that comes to mind, but it feels even more than that. The peace I was able to make. And honestly, I think a part of it was the bringing to the surface the feelings I had suppressed and repressed, consciously and subconsciously. That was more healing than I had ever given it credit that it could be.
Because we're not taught to do it.
No. But and we're taught it's bad. It's an
Yes.
inconvenience and you're going to get stuck there and it sucks.
Feelings
Yeah.
aren't productive, right?
Uh-huh.
Pull by your bootstraps and whatever all that other bullshit that they
Yes.
tell us, right? But I think it's so beautiful to hear we call that, I call it shifts, right? Those are the shifts that have happened since brain spotting. And I don't know what they're going to be. You don't know
Right.
what they're going to be. And sometimes people don't even realize it until they sit and they go, oh, man, that thing that I would have this big bodily reaction about before, I noticed a little bodily reaction, but I felt more separate from it.
Mm-hmm.
Or I'm having more clarity about it. Or when we do something that I literally just did brain spotting recently on, I was having so much physical pain in my knees that I could barely walk. And I'm not even 40 years old. There's no reason why this should be happening.
Right.
So I knew that there were components of it that were emotional. And so it's not that the symptoms or the manifestations, we expect them to get better with brain spotting, but man, we hope they at least improve when you when you
Mm,
what it is that's under the surface, because a lot of what we experience in life, I say it's the tip of the iceberg, right? Your interaction with your daughter is the tip of the iceberg, and it's all the ice that's just like hiding
yes.
underneath the water and expanding. And that's what I really think brain spotting allows you to go in and grab, and allows it to just maybe melt a little bit so it feels a little bit more manageable.
Mm-hmm.
I tell people, I warn them with brain spotting, sometimes feel like they're getting worse before they get better, because holy shit, you're feeling for
Yeah.
really feeling. It's not that you weren't feeling before. And I can only explain it in my own personal experience. But what I was feeling before was definitely feelings, and it was definitely there. But it's like the brain spotting removed this layer and allowed me to go so much deeper than I
Yes.
ever thought that I could ever go. And that's the magic of it, because we don't know how it's going to affect you until, again, we meet again. And I say, and I see the frame that you have brought in this time.
Mm-hmm.
And the nervous system, I had said this in my brain spotting masterclass, that my weird hypothesis, I suppose, is that the nervous system really does have a hierarchy and where it feels safe to go. So it's not
Mm,
that all of your work with your mom before didn't matter. It was puzzle pieces in the process. And this just allowed it to go a little deeper. If I would
yeah.
have met you 10 years ago and offered this,
Yeah.
I would hypothesize that something else would have come up completely.
Yeah.
And where I see the biggest examples in this is that clients that I know who have had sexual trauma or sexual assaults, if we try to brain spot that right from the beginning, it's not that that processing doesn't matter, but there's so many protective dissociative barriers in the body that it almost allows us to scoop a little bit of cream off the top. And then it's like 2 years later, we're doing a brain spotting about something completely fucking random. And that is what comes out. The sexual trauma finally comes out. So
Mm-hmm.
that's where my agenda and my has to go completely out the window. I have
Mm-hmm.
to trust that what you're bringing me is where your nervous system feels it's safe to go. And even if you want to work on something, it doesn't mean that the processing, it will always work in some way.
Yes.
But I couldn't tell you how many times I've brain spot on my physical ailments, or how many times I've brain spot anger and resentment about my childhood. And there can be a frustration that comes with that. Like,
Yeah.
I've done the parts work, I've done the CBT, I've done this, I've done that. Why do I not feel better? And, but you do feel incrementally better. But
Yeah.
sometimes, man, that stuff is so deep within us, it's going to keep circling back. It's
Mm-hmm.
going to keep coming back around until, again, every time you go there, it's cleaning out another corner of cobwebs in that basement
Mm-hmm.
of your soul and of where your pain is and where your grief is. And
Mm,
it's my job, my only job, I feel, in those sessions is to hold space and allow you to have choice, control, and the capacity to trust not only the healing space, but yourself.
yeah.
And that's where that attachment stuff starts to get repaired.
Well, and I feel like there's, for so many of us, when we need it to make sense and we need it solved and resolved, not open, because that's inconvenient. Because it's not just the emotions, then it's, well, what do I do with all these thoughts? What do I do with this? Like, I need to check this off so I can get more productive over here. And this is where I think probably too, if you come out the gate and brain spotting is the first thing you do, if you have resistance or you haven't done some of that work of like, hey, let's talk a little bit about your urgency and a little bit about how your shame tells you that you got to fix this. So
Mhm.
you got to solve it right now. That's going to make this feel harder for you. I mean, it's the same as talk therapy. It's the
Mhm.
same as like someone will start to feel a little bit better and they stop coming to sessions because they're like, I'm good. And then there's a crisis that happens and they're like, fuck, I'm not good. And it's
Right.
like, well, that's because you stopped at the surface,
Yep.
because the surface symptom, the conscious symptom, maybe got better.
Yes.
Like you stopped binging or you stopped using a substance, you stopped having this interpersonal conflict with your partner or whatever, but we
Right.
didn't get to the root of it. So it's just going to manifest in a different way. And so I feel like you're describing the need for people to accept that that is what healing looks like.
Yep. It's ugly. It
And it's
sucks.
sucks. And
It's
we said
awful.
that, I feel like, in my session. I just remember several times being like, yeah, this is fucking terrible.
Yes, this is
This
awful.
doesn't feel good. And now you leave, and that's the other part that's hard. And I think this is hard universally when you're doing the healing is like, as you start doing more healing, you feel resentful that the rest of the world isn't doing healing.
Absolutely.
So now they are in that ignorant spot that
Yep.
you still half wish you could be in.
Yep.
And you're just fucking pissed because they're not doing this and this sucks. And now you're the one that's lonely and you're the
Yep.
one that's feeling all this stuff.
Mhm.
And so there has to be this sort of radical turning over of, but you weren't happy. You
Yep.
were not living your authentic life. You were living in shame. You were living in repression. You were
Yep.
living in this codependent, people pleasing. I've just got to suppress everything.
Yes.
That wasn't healthy for you. It just easier because then you could still go on the hustle sort of cultural capitalism train.
Yes, you fit right into the mold that
Yes.
everybody wants you to be, and
Yes.
it only feels easier because it's familiar. The
Yes.
brain likes familiarity, and that's why
Yes.
we are subconsciously driven to keep repeating the same patterns, even if they suck, even if they bring pain, is because it's just familiar. And so this is encouraging, right? This type of work, somatic work, getting back to the body, is encouraging people to forge a new pathway. And I do joke, and there are some times where I'm like, fuck, I really wish I was dissociated during this because this is painful as shit. And
Yes.
but my dissociated life, I couldn't feel, it was blocking out the bad and also blocking out the good.
Mhm.
I could be happy, but I wasn't present and happy, not
Right.
in the way that I really feel it now.
Yes.
So I could go back to that life. I could, and codependency always rears its ugly head, right? Our habits always come back again because the body and the brain are programmed on survival. They don't give a fuck if you're happy. They
Yeah.
just want you to keep breathing from one minute to the next, regardless of what that means. And the
Mhm.
universe is going to keep giving you challenges when you're saying, I'm doing this work and I want to choose differently. It's going to keep throwing challenges in your face to see, are you serious? I call it the
Yeah.
are you still stupid test. Are
Yeah.
you going to fall for the old ways of being, or are you going to forge a new path? And really, brain spotting, I feel like, has accelerated my ability to do that. And it's never too late.
Mm.
I work with so many people who are in their 50s and 60s and 70s. It is never too late to start doing this healing, but it sure as shit feels super intimidating when you
Yeah.
have 70 years of trauma plus the 8 generations of trauma that you inherited. But
Yes.
it doesn't mean that it's not worth it. What's really kind of, I'm sure, funny but not funny is that children and teenagers are much, much more receptive to brain spotting because they are feelers. Yeah, that left side of their brain that needs to know the what, it needs to explain everything. It's not fully formed yet.
Right.
I've done a couple sessions with teenagers, and one session, they're like, okay, I don't think I need to come back anymore. Like, I feel good. I feel
Yeah.
good about that thing. I feel more confident. I feel more clear minded. And it's not that that can't happen, but when you become a grown up and you have all these experiences, right?
Mhm.
And the brain has been reinforced, right? Again, because we seek that familiarity, we seek validation in even those negative subconscious core beliefs of I'm not enough or I suck or I'm not worthy or whatever. We have all of those now language based memories that go along
Yeah.
with that. And brain spotting kind of allows us to work on the ones that are language based and the ones that have come before that.
Yeah.
And that's why there's a time and place for all modalities. I would never sit here
Yeah.
and talk shit on CBT. Was super helpful for me for the first 10 years of my therapy journey. And now it's okay, I can't keep talking about this. I need to find a different way. I need to pull it out by the root. And
Mhm.
the magic that has happened and I've been able to witness, like you said, it can be a really lonely process because we look at everyone else around us. And I'm sitting here in a state of curiosity and kindness and care and compassion.
Mhm.
And sometimes other people do not follow suit with that. And
Right.
we are usually in therapy because of the people in our lives who refuse to go to therapy.
Right.
But every time I go to one of these brain spotting trainings or master classes, it's something that has been on my heart or that I've been struggling with will come out of someone else's mouth in their session. or
Hmm.
something that question that I was seeking, or something like a decision that I will come out and someone else is processing. It is
Yeah.
incredible to sit and honestly realize how much more connected we are than different.
Hmm.
And it does feel sometimes lonely to live in that when the people around you don't speak that same language.
Hmm.
I find it in those trainings. I find it in other people like you who are doing this work and are willing to go there.
Hmm.
There's more unicorns out there than we think.
I have said that especially early in the pandemic, where I was like, I feel more connected to my therapy clients
Yes,
than I do to anyone else
I
in my
say
life
that
right
all the
now.
time. I say that all the time.
And like from a very healthy, I understand boundaries and all that.
Yes.
And it still happens. You're right. Like this thing will come up. I just had it happen the other day with a client where I'm like, fuck, I've been really trying to work through this. And now I can be here on this other side. And
Yes.
I do think there is so much beauty in that because we are these practitioners that work in spaces where our job is to help facilitate those vulnerable opportunities for people.
Mhm.
So by nature, we get the gift of being in that. And so we can see that and it helps us so much. And I think the more we have these conversations, it's why I think group therapy is so powerful too, is like being able to be in a space where someone else brings something up and then someone else is like, oh my gosh, that's
Mhm.
happened to me too. I mean, I've seen it
Mhm.
where somebody will start talking about how they want to change their drinking and suddenly two or three other people are like, oh my gosh, I've been really wanting to talk about that and I've been
Yes.
really scared to bring that up. And now I feel this sense of empowerment, or I don't want to go to this family event, or I didn't vote the same way as the rest of my family, but they all think I did. And
Right.
then all these other people are like, oh my gosh. And so it is that reminder of like, I think our brain does try to oversimplify, but I think in the wrong places. And I think it does try to make it where it's like, well, just do this and you'll be fine. Just act this way and everything's going to be good. Where I think we could simplify things a little bit more is to recognize that the human experience for all of us is filled with a drive to perform,
Yeah.
a fear of rejection, a loneliness that exists in that, and intergenerational transmission of trauma. Now, we could have a whole separate conversation around privilege and all of these other pieces. That's important. But on its root element, the human condition is to be in a state of believing we are not enough and suffering. And if we could bring more of that to the table to be like, we can't stop you from feeling this,
Mhm.
but one, it doesn't have to consume you. And two, it doesn't have to feel so lonely.
Right.
That to me is where the healing is. Like, I don't feel good
Right.
about some of the stuff that I've learned and processed and gone through. I just feel more at peace with it and
Yeah.
I feel less alone in it. So when I'm making these choices, I'm able to go, gosh, I'm not a shitty person because I had to set boundaries.
No.
A lot of people have had to do that. And I'm allowed to feel hurt and violated and sad and to need something different. And
Mhm.
I'm witnessing that other people have had to do that too. And I can see the compassion I give them. And I can now start to give it to myself. I still feel shame. I still feel fear.
Mhm.
I just feel less lonely and less controlled by the shame and fear.
When you watch someone and I witness their process and I just encourage them, whatever comes up, good, keep
Mhm.
going. You're doing great, keep going. And you just start to see that shame melt away,
Mhm.
really just allowing someone to be exactly who they are in that moment with no pressure, no judgment, no agenda, no nothing. It is, I'm so grateful to be able to hold that space and also be in that space when I am the client, and what that has allowed me to do for my own healing. And
Mhm.
like you're saying, the collective healing that we have when you are truly attuned with someone, there were pieces of me that were healing because of what you were saying.
Mhm.
That's the magic, because I can, once you learn how to access brain spotting and be open to it, I can self brain spot. And I do that a lot with
Mm.
some physical pains and things that are easier. And easier is a weird word to say about that, but maybe more accessible. Because for me, I really, in my inner child and my attachment wounds, it's almost when my processing comes up and I talk about it out loud, a piece of me needs that validation, or it just needs to be received by someone else and held in that space. So I
Mm-hmm.
can still do a lot of work solo. And it's when people come and we do a couple brain spotting sessions, I will start to teach them, how do you do this within yourself? How do you allow processing to happen, even if you don't have someone sitting there with you? But man, I just love the attunement. The attunement is
Mm-hmm.
really where I think that all of that power happens, and that connectedness. And in a time when the world feels really divided and really
Mm-hmm.
scary, you don't feel as alone anymore, because
Yeah.
both of your little kids are kind of hanging out together and healing together, which is such a cool thing. So,
Uh, I feel like I wish I had 87 more hours with you. I mean, I do, because we're going to continue this, whether it's podcast episodes, life in general, friendship, it just continues to expand. I am so grateful for the curiosity I think that you have brought into the work that you do, which allows you to be so willing to explore it and then to share it from a place that I think empowers other people to be curious. So it isn't, well,
you
this is what you have to do and this is what's right for you and this is why it's the best.
know,
It's, gosh, I'm experiencing this and I'm seeing this and I want to share that. And again, I think getting back to the core when we're talking about shame resilience is that place where we are less dominated by the fear that we're not enough
yes.
and that we're starting to be able to get out of the binaries and
Hmm.
like, you're either good or bad. That person's good or bad. You're right or wrong. They're right or wrong. You're a dick or you're not. Like, we
Hmm.
can let go of some of that to realize that the contextual awareness we can bring to our life is such that forgiveness could be more accessible for ourselves, for other people.
Yes.
Openness is more accessible. Boundaries are less overwhelming because they don't feel like punishments that
Right.
you either earn the right to give or you talk yourself out of. They just feel like a necessary part to help shift the context of your life to work a little bit easier.
We don't come into this world shamed and hating ourselves. When you look at a
No.
kid really fucking digs themselves. Like,
Oh,
I'm
yeah.
sure Everly loves all her weirdness and who she is. It's the world that beats it out of us.
Yeah.
And I hope that with the openness to modalities like this, like brain spotting, like
Mhm.
EMDR, like somatic experiencing, like parts work, that there can be, I really truly want to believe so much that there is this collective wave of healing that
Mhm.
is that is so paramount right now, in light of and in spite of everything that's going
Oh,
on.
yeah.
And I couldn't be more grateful to sit here and talk about something that in the brain spotting community, sometimes I'm like, oh man, I have like this little secret of like all this like really deep, like this amazing transformative work. And I kind of want to keep it to myself. That little stubborn part of me really like but that's not in the brain spotting community. We want people to learn about it. We want people to be open to it. We want them to experience it so that the
Mhm.
ripple effect can start to happen. Because whether whether or not you understand a single fucking word of anything that we said about how it goes, please reach out to Kyira or myself, because there's no better way to understand brain spotting than to just do it.
Yeah.
I will do it from the first session, because
Yeah.
to me, that's whatever's meant to come up is going to
Yep.
come up. And then that gives the person a rubric and kind of guideline of, oh, I didn't even realize that those things here's my hierarchy. Right.
Yes.
And so it's not something that I shy away from. And I love that you use the word curious, because I really try to just sit in that space of not what's wrong with someone, but what has happened to them.
Mhm.
And not just what happened to them in their, you know, core memory, lived experience, neocortex lifetime, what happened to them from 0 to 3 years, what happened to them
Yeah.
in the womb, what was mom like, what was mom's parents like, what were dad's parents. I really try to just be so expansive in that, so that I can see a whole picture, because
Mhm.
someone is not just the quote symptoms that they come and sit down in front of me. There's so much more to the story than that. And my brother likes
Mhm.
to tell me I think too much, but I like that I think a lot, because there is more to the picture.
Yes.
When you had said about earlier, we follow these models that are evidence based,
Mhm.
and in my brain spotting master class, is brain spotting, is it evidence based, right? And that's a very Western model. Meanwhile, the
Yes.
rest of the world functions under Eastern medicine and all this other stuff, and billions of people follow that, but only a small fraction follow the Western model. But we have this, evidence based practice, and they said, but what about just practice based evidence? And I think
Mm,
brain spotting, the proof is in the pudding.
yeah.
Give it a chance, be open, and
Mm-hmm.
what it can do for you is probably beyond what you could have ever imagined. My life now is truly in my depths of my codependency. I never imagined being where I am and how I feel,
Mm-hmm.
and not having, when I say, like, I don't know where all those anxious thoughts went, but they're not in my head anymore. My head
Yeah.
is quiet now. I couldn't
Yeah.
believe I lived 20 plus years of my life with so much busyness and questioning
Yeah.
myself.
Yeah.
And that's where this work has really opened doors for me, that, again, out of my worst moments came this healing. So it's all about the positive psychology and the ripple effect of it. If I didn't go
Ugh.
through that, the post traumatic growth would not have happened.
So I had two thoughts when you were talking. And as I think about kind of how I want people to, as we wrap up, think about what brain spotting did, at least for me, because I can only speak to that perspective.
Sure.
I think about, I used to watch a lot of like suspenseful FBI serial killer, high, whatever. And I think about like redacted documents,
Hmm.
and where when you get this redacted document and all the black that's put over these lines, you can't read all these pieces. So you can read one or two words.
Hmm.
And you're like, I don't know what the fuck this means, but
Right.
there's a lot of information here. Apparently it's really important, but I don't know what it is. And I'm not allowed to see it.
Yeah.
And I felt like what brain spotting started to do was to get rid of the black ink over the top.
Oh, I love that analogy.
And like this notion of like the first few chapters of my life, and then parts of every subsequent chapter were redacted. And I'm not done, but what I'm seeing is that it can be undone, that I can start to access those things and
Yeah.
I can start to feel those things. I do think that is the piece that you can ask yourself. And I've had a lot of clients come to me and be like, well, I have bad body image. I have this. It's the last piece of the puzzle. And so it's the conversations I have is, we don't really have to understand why. I mean, we can make sense of it. I can tie a lot of strings together, but a lot of it is like there's just sort of a letting go.
Hmm.
And that part looks a little different than like there's never not going to be a day where the world doesn't tell me that I should be changing my body in some way. But there was just a day I had to kind of let go of my eating disorder. And like that healing looks a little different than what I would necessarily assume in just talk therapy, where it's like in 6 sessions, we're going to wrap it up. You're going to understand
Right.
completely why this happens. And then everything is just going to be fine. And you're going to be able to make this choice. And so I feel like for you all, as you're thinking about this, to think what information is available to me about me, in me, that I have yet to read,
Yep.
and am I willing to be vulnerable enough to go search for it? And I think that's the thing that then Jess can give you is that space to go there. And
Hmm.
you might not like what you read. I didn't like everything I read in session one. And I'm sure there's a fuck ton of stuff I'm not going to look forward to reading as we do more. But reading it, the knowing gave me a sense of peace that even in discomfort still felt better than the unknowing. And that I think is the beauty. And the second thing, when you talked about sort of that stubborn part, not wanting to share, but also like you do and you want everyone to know, it's like our actual goal is to put ourselves out of business in this work that we're
Yeah.
doing. Like that's the real goal.
Yes. My goal is to not have people come back to me.
Like we want to not have this be a thing. And that there's always going to be our own shame and fear and ego that comes into play. But like the reality is like that is the ultimate goal in healing because all of us can exist in such a different place. And that does take work. And so listeners, I know that I feel like we've confidently answered some of your questions, but I'm really hoping that you feel like you've got a lot more because good news, you can reach right out to Jess and she can tell you more about it. And I think the most helpful thing for me was I had been reading about brain spotting for years. I've been introduced to brain spotting, EMDR, all these other treatment modalities, lots of Eastern medicine pieces. it didn't make sense to me until I did it. And I still can't fully make sense of it, but it did something. And so if you're leaving going, I don't really know, but maybe, and Jess seems cool, so that's enough, then like go with that and reach out to her and just try a session.
Mhm.
Just do one and see what happens because it's incredible. And so, Jess, last question before we
Yeah.
wrap it up, everybody, then, because I'll have all of your content down there so everybody can know exactly where to find you, including the link. Again, if you haven't listened to session 1, we have referenced codependency at least 6 times. So
Yep.
please go back and listen to that one too. My last question for you, as you are thinking about your continued healing
Mhm.
and the things that you have learned and unlocked, there's going to come a time where, again, it's an ebb and flow, and you're going to find that resistance. You're going to find that fear. You're going to find that invitation to go back to, what is it, that are you still stupid
Mhm.
question. In those moments, what do you want to come back to and remind yourself so you can continue to stay in your journey of healing? And if and when that happens, to give yourself both grace and love for the moments you do fall, but also the invitation to step back out with that courageous curiosity that you've been really cultivating for yourself and for others.
Man, I feel like I'm in it right now as you're talking about that. My throat was getting really tight. I'm feeling a little warm. I could tell I was looking down and to the right, which is one of my typical spots that I go to that I feel is very shame driven. The
Mm.
past few weeks have been, a real challenge. This time of year is a real challenge for me when it's dark out. And the amount of times that I accidentally gaslight myself and I say, am I depressed or am I hibernating or is this time of year? Right. And I think that I really have leaned into those parts of me still show up.
Mhm.
I catch them quicker, right? That beat me up and tell me I need to be doing more or doing better, or I'm the provider. I need to get my shit together. And I really am trying to slow it down and learn in a different way to give myself what I give so willingly to others.
Mm.
And trusting myself that when I know it's time for me to go deeper, I really have been open to signs and to things that bring up emotion in me and to seeing or hearing the same thing. And that brings up emotion in me. And sometimes my dreams, like it's really, again, that curiosity of where is the next layer of my healing coming in? And
Mhm.
when that happens, I call up my girl Tanya, who I met on a brain spotting training,
Mhm.
international training. Couple of us from the United States, 2 of us from Pittsburgh. You can't make this stuff up. She was meant to be my friend. And she is now
Mhm.
my business partner. We hold retreats on codependency. So a little, tidbit there. But I called her up and I said, I'm due for a brain spotting. There's something there that's deeper that I feel that it's just trusting myself and knowing when it's
Mhm.
time, because all of the work that I've done is not moot. I know that. All of the 20 years of therapy and everything that I've learned has been a building block. But healing is not a destination. I will continue to encounter things in life that will bring up the next layer of my healing. And do I know that I'm having avoidance all the time? No. But
Mhm.
it's a piece of bringing that to consciousness and saying, I've known for a while that there's some grief in there that I have not processed about losing my grandmother, my aunt, my dad, and a friend all within a very short period of time. It's the 10-year anniversary. The body is very cyclical. It's giving me lots of like random little crying bouts. And it's just
Mhm.
about, what is this about? And I joke and I'll ask Joe 5,000 times, do you think I'm depressed? When I know the answer is not
Mhm.
that I'm depressed. It's that my body is always trying to give me signs about the next stage of healing. And I know that one day I will wake up and make that call to Tanya and say, okay, I need to go deeper with this. And I know that she
Mm.
will be there to hold that space for me. And I know that there will be little parts of me that show up to try to block that resistance and resist that pain and going there. But I owe it to myself to keep going.
Yeah.
And the things that I have brain spot, I use the word curative very loosely, but man, they just don't impact me the way that they do. And they used
Mhm.
to. I mean, the way that they used to. And the ones that keep coming around It's just more cobwebs that I got to clean up.
Mm.
Yeah.
I love that. And I love that you like that telling yourself of like, you deserve to keep going.
Yeah.
And I think for many people, it's I should have fixed this by now. I'm too old. I'm
Mm,
this. And the idea is, regardless of your age, your experiences, where you're at this point, you are here breathing and alive, which
yeah.
means you are in your brain and body, and you have the right to choose your brain and body
Yeah.
and to think about what that is. And so, really thinking about it as a fundamental human right that you
Yeah.
have to do your own work and healing and to allow yourself to choose that.
You don't have to be or do anything. You just who you inherently, because you are living and breathing, deserve the same opportunity.
Yes. Okay, listeners, I know you are like, all right, I need more of Jess. So remember, I have all of her links down in the show notes so that you can reach out to her. I love that little tiny plug you gave. And so we'll make sure that we call that out as a big plug. These retreats that she does are incredible. So if you're in the area and you want to reach out to her and look at doing one of those, but also just scheduling a session with her, I think just in general, for all of you as you move forward, as you may not even realize what came up for you in this session as you're thinking about this and as your brain is kind of trying to process and make sense of everything in the background. So maybe just to ask yourself as we finish this episode, what am I feeling right now? Pause and just what do I notice in my body? What do I notice if I could give myself an emotional check in word? Like just giving yourself those micro opportunities to do what Jess said, put the head back on the body and do that noticing, doing that curiosity piece. And when you're ready for that next part, run to the show notes and reach out to her. And I am excited. I mean, again, Jess and I are going to do a few more sessions. I've got a few things that I've now been witnessing to notice where do I want to go and when am I ready. And so I'm excited to keep you all updated. And of course, we'll have to bring her back again. So don't worry, she will be back another time. But for now, listeners, take that moment, invite yourself in, one word to describe it, one moment with your body. And when you're ready for more, come back to this episode and all the wisdom that we have linked below. And we'll see you next time.